I warmly welcome all of you to the Naga Ancestral Voices exhibition on behalf of the Highland Institute, Kohima. So we are really excited to hear or listen to the actual voices of our ancestors from more than 100 years back. Is really exciting.
It has been a great pleasure for me to get the opportunity to take part in this organization of the exhibition. This research project, it ran from January to March of this year, and it's essentially, as has been mentioned, about the Sünder recordings of John Henry Hutton. These were made in the early 20th century, and indeed they have been inaccessible for a long time in Nagaland. Little awareness about the fact that Hutton made these recordings and that they are accessible also. So for this reason we thought it's a good idea to make these recordings also accessible physically in the exhibition for visitors to listen. So this, as has been mentioned, is probably first of its kind sound exhibition in Nagaland. So we are very happy that we could organize this. Then, long story cut short, the 12 cylinders that remained intact, they were later digitized at the British Library. And they are also now accessible on the website of the Rivers Museum. So you can see the link here on the slide. And apart from this, the museum also has a collection of Hutton's papers. That means there are some recording notes and a lot of official diaries also, and lots of other manuscripts and notes. Apart from this, the museum also has many photographs by Hutton from Nagaland. It's a huge collection. I believe hundreds, if not thousands of photos. And apart from this, the Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology, Cambridge, it also has a large collection of Hutton's papers and correspondence. And here just a short picture, small picture of the Sünder phonograph. This is just a sample picture. It's from a phonograph at the British Library. And this is not the cylinder with which John Henry Hutton recorded, but presumably it's a very similar type of cylinder. So these were essentially portable devices. This type was, incidentally, it was called the suitcase model. I think it's easy to understand why. And so basically they had a detachable horn, and they also ran without electricity. Which is, which was quite a large advantage in that time, especially. Here just a short, some short notes on the website. Here's just a screenshot of the John Henry Hutton archive. So if any of you are more interested in this, you can also look it up online. That's on the website of the Rivers Museum. The website also has a catalog of Hutton's photos. Not all are digitized, but I don't know how much, but a certain percentage of the photos has been digitized and is accessible on the website of the Rivers Museum. Now, why do we do all this research project? Is it just for our own career or vanity? Hopefully not. Important point, of course, the recordings are part of the intangible cultural heritage of Nagaland. By intangible cultural heritage, we mean the oral history, the songs, everything that has been orally transmitted, and music and dance in particular. Now, as I've mentioned, the communities have been disconnected from the recordings for over a century, and although the digitized recordings have been accessible online on the website of the Rivers Museum since 2012, not many people know about the recordings in Nagaland. And another important point is that the recordings are so far not accessible at archives in India or Nagaland, where they would be of interest, of course, to communities and researchers. And this is also something we try to address through this project, namely that we update the documentation of the recordings. And after that, we will provide copies of the recordings to the ARCE in near Delhi and to the Highland Institute here in Nagaland, so that the recordings with documentation are at some regional depositories where people can access them easily. Another important thing is that most of Hutton's recordings are actually very poorly documented, and this is because of the fact that Hutton was essentially not a musicologist, and he apparently regarded his song recordings. It was essentially in that period that song recordings, they were just seen as a means. That also happened with musicologists, that they used to record the songs and just sort of regarded the recordings as something temporary, and then they transcribed the songs, and they tried to write down the notations of the melodies, all the lyrics in their books, and they regarded these things, the transcriptions and the translations and the notations, as the important things, whereas they didn't actually take so much care about the recordings, or they didn't consider the recordings, the physical objects, as such important things itself. And for this reason, many of Hutton's recordings have just, we find very brief notes, and these are often handwritten notes, and I will come to that a bit later. And so it's a bit of a puzzle work if you try to make sense of his notes. And we also use these publications to make sense of his recordings, because actually Hutton, as I've mentioned, he transcribed and wrote about the songs in his publications. And yeah, and this is also one reason why we do the fieldwork, because in effect, I must admit, I'm fairly new to the whole topic of Nagaland. So in fact, I came in February this year. I was the first time in Nagaland, and it was naturally, it was an amazing experience. I was fascinated by everything, by the culture, by the people, by the landscape, and it was just a great experience. But the whole topic of Naga culture is quite new to me. I'm still learning about this, and in the course of this fieldwork, we have, with the help of community members, whom we have played the recordings. We played the recordings to them, and then we asked them about their impressions and what they think about the recordings, how relevant they are to them, if they can say us something about the songs that were sung, or if they could say us, give us some idea how they may have been recorded, and in which context. So these kind of questions we asked them. Just a bit to the background of the project. So it is funded by the International Association of Sound and Audiovisual Archives, and the partner institutions, which I have already mentioned, are the Recirculating Museum in Oxford, then the Archives and Research Center for Ethnomusicology, that's in Gurgaon, near Delhi, and of course the Highland Institute in Kohima. Let me just briefly outline the project phases. So the project had 3 phases. The first was essentially archival work in England. That means I was visiting the archives there, and I was looking at Hutton's recording notes and his other archival documents. Also at his literature, naturally. The second phase was the fieldwork in Nagaland, about which I have just spoken. And the third phase is bringing it all together and compiling all the gathered information into the spreadsheet database, meaning the documentation of the recordings, and to share the recordings with the documentation with the archives. Again, just a sample picture. Here we see actually a handwriting that is not Hutton's, that is actually from the curator of the Pitt Rivers Museum. That was Henry Balfour in that time. And he apparently wrote this song title on the box. Yeah, and next to that we just see the box cylinder. Actually not the cylinder itself, this is the container of the cylinder. I got a box cylinder here if anybody is interested in that such items. I can show it afterwards. And so it's essentially a cardboard container, and inside is a box cylinder on which was recorded. And this cylinder box was sent inside this one box.
Demo.
I just want to share one brief example about what this research project actually yielded some good outcomes. So this is Hutton's handwriting. It's not very clear, even if you see it on the paper. And on the right side, I have written down what is actually still on the website of the Pitt Rivers Museum. And there is written a Mitan cutting song at Sema Harvest Festival, sung by Vikelpa, Hultike, Likia, Hoito, and Regeko. Something like that. These are not actually funny names, these are names that were wrongly transcribed. And as you can see from the note that I put below, this should actually read Mitan cutting song at Sema Harvest Festival. And then the names that he wrote down were actually Vikepu, Mitihe, Nikie, Hoito, and Hezeku. And these were actually his assistants, or sorry, maybe I should say rather contacts. And they were from Zunuboto, all of them, and they were Sumi translators who assisted Hutton in his administrative works. And this information we found, well, as I mentioned, it's kind of a puzzle work. So on the one hand, I had to go to the archive and see the note again, the original note, the handwriting. And then what we did was to compare that with Hutton's publications. And then I realized actually these are the names that he's mentioning in his monograph, the Sema Nagas, as his translators. And then it became clear that this must be those persons. And yeah, and this is essentially how the project is helping us to make sense of the recordings, and also to make them more valuable for the Naga communities, because can give us so much information about the context of the recordings. Yes, just a few more pictures from my fieldwork. Here, example from Kohima, and there we found, for example, that at least one song that Hutton recorded is still practiced in the village today, in a different version. And we had actually the farmer Gosali Sophie, who's on the right of the picture. He sang the song for us, the same song that Hutton recorded in a slightly different version. And we also used some of the pictures from the Hutton collection of the Pettibulos Museum to find out a little bit more about the change of traditions and the festivals. So we found out that some of the festivals are in fact still celebrated in the village. And for example, Tekangi Gena, the Tekangi festival, about which we talked with Gosali Sophie. And unfortunately, it was just a very brief visit to the village, so there was not too much time to really go into detail of all of this. But I hope there will be opportunity in the future to do some more research on it. And here are some pictures from the Hutton collection, pictures made by John Henry Hutton. And this is how we did it basically. So this is a picture from the Highland Institute with one Chang musician, Benjamin Kokba, who listened to the Chang songs and actually provided us very detailed information about the songs. This is track number 5 on the first soundboard. And he actually, with the help of elders from Tuensang district, he was able to give us the almost complete translations of the songs. And I think he sent the links to the recordings to them, or maybe he sang them to them on the phone, I'm not quite sure. But basically, through this context, we could find a lot of out about the recordings. In other cases, it's much different, and some other recordings we found out very little about. It's, for example, Hutton's Sanktam song recording. And after the listening session, we had an interview with them to ask them about the recordings and their impressions. Yeah, we also promoted this a little bit on social media to create some awareness about the project. So if any of you are interested to see the picture, some more pictures, you can see that on Instagram, Naga Ancestral Voices. And this is how the database looks, basically, that we are providing to the archives in the end. And we hope that this will also useful for researchers in India and in Nagaland, especially to work with the recordings. I'm very much indebted to the Highland Institute, all of the staff of the Highland Institute. Without the help, I would have achieved just a fraction of what this research project actually yielded eventually.
I'm Mhao Odyuo. I'm an artist, and I'm also an art educator. Right here is my centerpiece of the whole exhibition. It's called the Bull Roarer. So here, it's a double-sided hanging sculpture. I carved this into the shape of the Bull Roarer. This is a young Konyak boy who's actually playing with a Bull Roarer. So Bull Roarer is a forgotten instrument, but in the early days, Bull Roarer was played to chase away spirits. This is a double-sided sculpture. So you might be thinking, what is this all? You will not understand if you don't go to the other side. So yeah, on the other side, I have a sculpture of a Mithun Haid, the full moon, which is slightly fading, and the circle is like the forgotten culture, slowly fading away. Our motifs are fading away slowly. People are actually misusing it, and then like a lot of things happening around it. We have to now start understanding the culture. around the bulwark are spirited wood carvings. This is the high spirited human being, Apo. In every tribe we have a folk tale of the high spirited human. Also, I carved out and added the limestone. In my own version, it's called Oha. Oha is a limestone. So in every tribe there is a limestone. Like earlier I've mentioned, in Kazakeno, like they have the spirit stones where they cannot touch. Actually, it brings a bad omen to the village. Also, I also carved out the hunting spirit. And only this the tattoo of a cognac wearer. And then with the Dao in it, it's showing that it's sleeping actually, the hunting spirit. And around it is a very old spear and also a weapon. So usually, actually, like iron was feared, so it was also a bad spirit. And here is the animal spirit actually. So the animal spirit, it's just a symbol that they also feared animals in the olden days. This section is the section where it was before Christianity. I mean, in Nagas, like, well, the exhibition inspired me, to be very honest. The recordings, the different sounds, and also of course with working with Aid, who is not here, and Cortina Child, we constantly exchanged talks, and yeah, I think it's wonderful. Yeah, I run an art institute called the Art Village, where it's just here in DBS Colony, and then also we have in some other locations. We have three different diplomas for now. If interested, anyone can come and speak to me, or we'll be in the office. My staff will be in the office, so they can connect they can look for the Art Village. So that's where we work. We constantly keep doing art. Yeah. For wood carving, there was no formal education, to be very honest. I learned it from some senior artists. Formally, I've learned the theory of art, but practical wood carving, I learned it from the traditional artists that still exist, like the senior artists like Lepten Jamir, Nivotio. I also learned it from London. So there are two, three artists, the last artists that are actually here. So we should, young artists should constantly go meet them and then learn from them as well. So in Kohima. So although I know about traditional art, it was like sitting with them and learning in some way has pushed me so far to do wood carving. It was challenging to do first start wood carving, but yeah, informal education taught me this. It's a wood. It's called gamari, but also it's a very soft wood, and I think it must be around 20 to 30 years old. So we have to carve out from that log, and it took some time. Yeah, all the pieces here, I think it's very hard to get assistance on your artworks, so we did it alone. Yeah. This is before Christianity, this is after the coming of Christianity, and now this is the present situation. Here's the prodigal son in Naga version. So in the painting you will see the identity pin torn. Also the murum shows that it's a very he's a very rich Naga man who actually owns the house after throwing the feast. So all the motifs on the houses are like that. And here is the elder brother who is actually very upset about his homecoming. So the composure was from the Bible story, as well as the recordings, how it was narrated. It was very difficult, but yeah, we tried to compose it in one frame. Yeah, we did it together on this one. Not painted it together, but composing it together. Yeah. He's a wonderful artist. His name is Lucy. This is the smallest sculpture on my exhibition, but this is a double-sided sculpture. On the back is the Naga hornbill feather. It clearly shows that we still have our identity really strong. But in the front we have a sculpture with a big mouth. It shows that how our people are feeling, how selfish we actually have become in general, and also the stones are still there, lying there. Our culture is still lying there, but we are so confused. So this is the confused generation. So that's what basically it means. Thank you so much.